The welfare system is not working. Our economy is now as unequal, a system that's broken. Our society is broken. As humans, we also have flaws. And one of the flaws we have is we don't deal well with inequality.
In one sentence, could you please summarize the universal basic income?
Universal basic income is a guaranteed payment each individual gets, no strings attached.
All the time? No, there's nothing like, that's it.
Sometimes, there'll be an age limit, but it's a grant that you're given. And it's like a pension plan, the same kind of that we have for old age individuals. They get a basic set of money and there's no questions asked what they do with the money. They just get it.
Okay. And, from all the research I've done, I've seen kind of a trajectory. It's kind of picked up at some point in time, then it went down, and now it's back on the rise. Like we have Elon Musk, we have a whole bunch of tech billionaires talking about it, and I think they're giving it like a significant boost in terms of popularity. Why do you think it's actually coming back?
Well, I mean, there's different reasons why, and there's different streams of interest in basic income. The tech folks, their line of argument is that pretty soon technology is going to eliminate all employment. And so how's the economy going to function? How are people going to get money to buy things if there's no employment? So their idea is with all this technology, we're going to be so incredibly rich. Let's take some of those riches, give it to individuals. Those individuals can then buy the stuff that the robots are going to make. And the people who own the robots will make profits because the people have some money to buy the things the robots are making. So the idea is this whole thing is supposed to hold together and sustain our society. So that's sort of the Silicon Valley, Elon Musk kind of approach. There's another group that are saying, something has gone wrong in our economy, that wages have stopped going up, income inequality is increasing. A lot of people are in insecure jobs, so they can't get into the housing market. They can't start families. They don't want to get into relationships. They're just really stressed. Mental health is on the rise, and so what we need is some kind of a system that gives some stability to individuals and families, so that they can function better and find a more lucrative spot in the economy and better wages. So there's really those two kind of approaches. So the first one is, look, there's not going to be any employment, so we got to give people some money. The other one says, look, the unemployment system, the welfare system is not working. The demands sort of are increasing. We need a whole new system. And the basic income is sort of one alternative. And it also goes back, there's a sort of a conservative approach to basic income, which was our welfare system is not functioning very well. And in fact, if you know anything about the welfare system, it's quite demeaning, bureaucratic. People get on it, they get off it, etc. And the argument, this would simplify the whole thing. Okay, we have to take care of people. That's a social right as a citizen. And so you give them enough money so that they don't starve and they have a little bit of accommodation. And you spare them all this sort of bureaucratic nightmare of trying to go through the Ontario Disability Support Program or other kinds of welfare systems we have in place. So,
but then it also comes with the fact that it doesn't matter what your income is at, right? At what point is your income level?
Well, there's all kinds of different designs. There's all kinds of
universal basic income.
So some people, for some, it's you just give everybody the same amount of money, whether you're Elon Musk or a tenured professor or living on the street, you get the same amount of money, and then you recoup it through the tax system.
Oh, because they're the higher tax bracket.
Because it'd be taxable income, and so those people who are making $1 million a year, they're not going to have any net benefit from this. It's all going to get taxed back. And the reality is they probably pay a little bit more because someone's got to pay the basic income to those people who don't pay tax. And so it becomes a system of income redistribution. And in some ways, I think that is one of the more interesting aspects of basic income, that it's trying to reverse what has become a trend in almost all developed countries in the last 25 or 30 years towards a less and less equal distribution of income.
The most popular argument against it was that we're giving money to people who don't need it, like Elon Musk. Like we're taking this, we will talk, I'm sure we'll talk more about welfare, but we're taking this universal basic income, we divide the pie into multiple pieces, and then we give it to Elon Musk, for example, who doesn't really need it. And then that in its order takes away from people at the poverty line. Do you think there's...
No, but again, there's two sides to the basic income. One is some people are given money, or everyone's given money, but then some people, money is going to be taken back.
Yeah.
And so for the Elon Musks, it's a paper transaction. They may get $20,000, but almost certainly they're going to pay $30,000 more in taxes.
Okay, so
and so they're going to be net losers. I guarantee all the systems that basic income show up is that people who are rich will be net losers. People who will be poor will be net winners. But you can't just say everyone's getting $20,000 without saying, well, how's that money going to get recouped? Because it's not falling like manna from heaven. You got to find the taxes. And so the taxes are going to be paid by wealthier people.
Yeah.
So basic income would not increase my income. It would cost me. And that's fine. I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with that.
Do you think that might be? I don't think there will be a big loss with the basic income when you will add it to a higher income bracket, right? Like you were fine with that. Do you think that maybe politically it would be harder to push it through? Let's say.
Well, I think people have a lot of concerns about basic income. I have a lot of concerns about basic income. I mean, we really do need to know more about exactly how it's going to operate. It's one of the unfortunate things about canceling the Ontario project is that we did have a panel that was going to evaluate it and collect more information on exactly how is this policy going to work. What are the benefits? And if this was a policy that improved mental health, this was a policy that allowed people who were depressed and unable to get into the labor market to now get into the labor market because they can go out and buy a decent pair of pants and have a decent accommodation. And so when they present to the employer, they don't look like a train wreck.
Yeah.
They look like someone who actually might be productive. Well, that benefits everybody, and that's what we want to do. And I think right now one has to accept, we spend a lot of money on people who haven't found their place in the labor market. Could we spend that money better? And I think that's what the pilot was meant to do. That's what the evaluation was meant to do. We'll never know.
Unfortunately. From the pilot project, I know that the data is very scarce. Like we don't get a lot. But do you what was the expectations how people would spend the universal basic income? Was it like general necessity goods, or because a big part of it, right? Like any single time you talk about like we'll just give you cash, like they will go and spend this cash on something they don't need. Or on the opposite side was something with welfare and housing, like we give them a certain tax, a certain break for housing only, and they spend only housing. And this is like food coupons and food stamps, and they spend only in food. But when there's like, we'll give you cash, like what are they gonna do with cash? Do we have any research behind that? Like what do people usually spend it on?
Well, look, some people spend their money foolishly. That doesn't mean that all people spend their money.
For sure.
And so we shouldn't even begin to make that assumption. What we know anecdotally from what we heard for people who are on basic income, that for a number of people, they were able to get better accommodations, and so that made them healthier. They were able to eat better food, and so they became more presentable. Some of them went back to school and got more education, more human capital. So most people did things that most of us would say, well, that's a logical thing to do with your money. Of course, there's going to be a few people who fritter it away in unnecessary things, but that we shouldn't assume that's even all likely for most people.
Yeah.
The pilot itself, we wanted to look at how much that money went to better housing, how much of that money went to better accommodations, how much that money went to supporting your kids and allowing them to be more successful in school. Because I think one of the things we need to be always thinking about is the intergenerational effects of poverty. That if you grow up in a household that's poor, then there's a good chance that you're going to be behind other people who live in households that are children that live in wealthier households. You can have poor access to education. You're not going to have access to all the extracurricular activities, etc. And so you're going to be behind your other cohort of young people. And so one of the effects of basic income, as well as being good for the people who received it, the parents, could also have been good for the children. Now, again, these were all things that we were looking at. We had a very sophisticated strategy to try and understand what basic income would do, and of course, we'll never know.
When you kind of come down to it, right? Universal basic income, is it directed towards what problem we addressing here? Is it we addressing the poverty problem? That's kind of the idea of universal basic income, or we addressing, because I know some people they take universal basic income and then address a problem that's going to come up in 20 years when like we're gonna be so wealthy that we can basically live on that.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people see this as a poverty program, and there's no doubt that a lot of the money would be allocated to poor households, poor individuals, so relieve poverty. But I think there's a second really important rule for basic income that we're only now beginning to understand. What we're beginning to understand as more and more work doesn't become secure, it becomes less secure, and your short-term contracts and whatnot, there's always a fear that I got a great job now for 6 months, paying me $7,000 or $80,000, but it's a 6-month job.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I'm going to be in 6 months. And right now, the floor where you can fall to is pretty far down. You can there's no backup support. So what basic income might have done is give those sorts of people a chance to be more entrepreneurial, to take chances, to look for short-term contracts that pay them well in the short run because it's something they really want to do or they think that has real potential. And if it doesn't work out, well, then they can fall back on the basic income. And so they don't fall into complete poverty. So it actually might make our labor market more dynamic, which I think is absolutely a good thing.
Okay. And is there any other ways? Because everything that you're explaining, that's like sounds great, like to make a more entrepreneurial society where you can take risks because you do have this pillar that can fall off. That means like you'll produce, ideally as an entrepreneur, you'll produce more jobs in the economy. Is there any other way to stimulate economy to this degree without universal basic income?
Yeah, I'm sure there probably are other kinds of policies. I'm not really aware of them, to be honest with you. But I think I'm actually trained as an economic historian.
Okay,
that's my background.
Yes,
and my position here is we have a whole set of social and labor market institutions, many of which came out right after the Depression and World War II. So things like unemployment insurance, the Canada Pension Plan, how people are trained, the ability of workers to form unions, how we take care of our children, childcare, et cetera. All the institutions got put in place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And that's when the labor market was very different. People went into lifetime employment. They came out of university, they got a job for life. I think of these as 60s and 70s jobs. That's not our labor market today. And so I think what we need now is a whole new set of institutions, particularly labor market institutions, that will give people the confidence to operate in a labor market that clearly is, short-term employment is more prevalent. There's no doubt about that. People change jobs. The pace of technology is increasing rapidly. And so jobs come and jobs go, right? If you were a while ago, if you were at BlackBerry, you might have thought, I'm in it for life, right? Yeah. Well, Zoom, you're not. You're out of your company's gone.
Kodak.
Right? Exactly. So all these kind of companies now are coming and going at a much more rapid pace. And so I think we need institutions that protect people to some degree from that insecurity. And basic income might have been one solution to that problem.
Talking back to the technology of it, and is something that really read a lot about and really heard a lot is automation. And that's where they address the problem is with the current rate of automation. We might have to implement universal basic income because we'll just what we're going to do with all the labor. People that are going to be replaced by robots. From your perspective, is it like is it a horror story, or it's like actually like we will get to that point at some point?
No, I don't think it's a horror story at all. I mean, I don't think we want to get rid of technology. I mean, as I say to my students, one way to solve the unemployment problem in any economy is get rid of tractors and give people shovels, right? I mean, we'll have people digging fields, right? And we'll have lots of work. So I don't think we want to go there. So I think we want to embrace technology.
Okay.
At the same time, I think we have to understand it could have some negative effects on some people. And so again, we need to work our way through that. If the end result of automation and AI is we get rid of almost all employment, but we produce lots and lots of stuff, well, that's fantastic. Well, lots of leisure. We'll have a great quality of life. The question is, how do we share that wealth, right? And now, I think we have a system that's broken because as technology is being introduced, a small group of individuals are gaining almost all the advantages of that technology, and more people are being left behind. And so our society is broken. And it's not a problem of the technology, it's a problem of the institutions in which the technology is embedded. So unions are weaker, the middle class is shrinking, a lot of employment is becoming less secure. At the same time, if you're in the top 10%, things have never been better.
Yeah. And do you think it's society is broken or just the economy is.
Well, I think society. It's the society economy. It all goes together, right? And I think right now we are living with an old set of institutions that are not reflective of the labor market and the pace of technology and the kind of jobs we have today.
And what would, in your opinion, what would be the institutions that might actually
a big problem is training, right? Talk to an employer. The first thing they'll say is, I can't find anybody with the right skills.
Okay.
Right? Ask them how much training they do. And they're going to tell you, zero. Because they've got into the habit now of saying, I have these people on 6-month contracts. Why would I train them? Because they're going to be gone in 6 months. And that's absolutely logical. Why would you train someone who's going to be here in the short term? But what that means is all the training that used to be done in the 60s and 70s, when you took someone who was in the mailroom and you trained them up, and eventually they became the CEO. It never really happened, but that was sort of the myth. That doesn't happen anymore because the person in the mailroom is probably a temp worker. Right? And so our system is not generating the middle skill and the upper skill and the senior management people who can really do a good job of running their organizations. So I think training is a problem. After World War II, we sort of allocated the responsibility for training to companies. And we allocated to them on the assumption these companies would employ people for life. And so they had an incentive to take someone who's going to be there for 30 years and make them a better worker. Now they don't have that incentive anymore because people aren't there for 30 years, or fewer people are there for 30 years. So how do we generate that training? Right now we've individualized it, so people are having to pay for their own training. And for a lot of people, if you're on low income and insecure employment, it's a real problem. So some people are not getting the human capital they need to become more productive citizens. And ultimately, as a society, I think we want people to be as productive as they can.
About universal basic income as well.
Yep.
We're saying because of the society we're creating, you were proposing, hey, let's look at the institutions and let's check the institution now, so maybe rewire the system a bit, but then let's also implement the universal basic income that might help everyone who, like, let's say at the bottom of the financial hierarchy, right? For them now, they can go and train themselves and get specialization so they can be more competitive in the marketplace, right? Yeah. With automation and everything that's going on, will we tax a few winners with automation as we move forward? Because more like this is going to be a few companies. If we go with the way we're going, it's going to be a few corporations that's going to have most of it. And then are we going to, without institutional reform, right? Are we going to charge those companies to pay for the universal basic income to kind of substitute for all the jobs that will be lost in the process?
I mean, if these companies are producing a lot of wealth, let me go back. John Maynard Keynes wrote after the Depression that the problem with the economy at that time was there wasn't enough what he called effective demand, that workers didn't have the confidence to spend their money because the employment outlook was so bleak. Firms then said, I don't have the confidence to invest in creating jobs because I don't think anyone's going to buy my stuff because the workers don't have the confidence to buy things. And so the economy gets itself into a downward spiral. And so Keynes's solution was to give people money. Then they'll start spending it, and then entrepreneurs will start saying, well, man, stuff's going off the shelves. My inventories are going down. I better build a new factory. And when I build a new factory, well, I'm going to have to hire some more workers. And then those workers say, well, I'm going to buy some cars now. And then the auto plants. So it was called priming the pump. And the message there is the owners of the system of production have an incentive for people to buy their stuff. Right? And if we have a system now where people can't buy the stuff that the people at the top are making, the whole thing will collapse. And that's basically the Silicon Valley argument, that we need to give people money so they can buy the computers and the software and the Amazon products and whatnot that are being produced by these firms. If Amazon and Google try and keep it all, they'll get nothing.
Okay.
Right. The system will collapse.
Okay. But then you that's actually pretty great that you mentioned that, because the idea of universal basic income was before that, right? As well, like it's not a novel idea. We kind of played with that idea of giving cash for quite some time.
Yeah, Romans used to give out bread for free.
Exactly. Right. But then the system kind of, from what happened after the Great Depression, I'm not sure if did they pump the money actually in, or was that a theory more?
Well, certainly that's when things like unemployment insurance emerged, old age pensions emerged. That's when public projects started emerging. So they built all the highways in the United States. They built the Hoover Dam, massive employment projects. Ultimately, the Depression was ended as we started gearing up for war, right? So suddenly a lot of people had to start making weapons. But what happened after the war is that a set of institutions that was put in before, particularly unions and their ability to bargain with their employers, the unions were able to bargain a share of the growing productivity that emerged after World War II. Because after World War II, that's when automation started getting put in place. Firms are producing all kinds of stuff much, much cheaper, but workers could get enough wages to buy this stuff, and so everybody benefited. That started coming unstuck in the 70s and 80s, and now we have this imbalance. Workers are the share of income going to labor is declining. It's actually declined quite rapidly in the last 20 years. The share of income going to profits has increased, and I think we're now at an imbalance where a lot of firms are beginning to say, well, I don't know if I can invest in new factories. I don't know who's going to buy this stuff because we have all these low income and we don't have enough middle income people around.
But then, even with that, we're addressing the same problem. Hey, the economy is going to collapse. We didn't introduce the universal basic income back in the day, and system kind of leveled itself out, and now it's going back to the balance and back in balance. Why don't you think that this time, without universal basic income, it will maybe just equals it out again?
Yeah, one option is to go back to more of a 50s and 60s kind of economy, make unions stronger so they can demand a better share of what's going on. But I don't think we're going. See, I'm a historian. I don't think you ever go back. You always go forward. So I don't think we're going back to the 50s and 60s. And in some ways, the 50s and 60s weren't great for everybody. There are a lot of groups that got left behind. Women in general did not do well in that period. Immigrants, racialized workers. So it wasn't a great period for everyone. I think what we need to say is, let's embrace rapid technical change. Let's embrace it. But if we're going to embrace it, then we have to insulate people from some of the negative effects. Right now, the cost of rapid technical change is being borne by the bottom half of the population. I think that's not a great thing. And things like basic income, things like enhancing the Canada Pension Plan, fully subsidizing universities and training programs, all these things would help people who are being somewhat left behind to gather some assets so they can do better in the system.
Okay, because when you said embrace the technology, it's I think that's totally what we're doing now. We want to train towards the future. And it doesn't, to me at least, it doesn't look like we're looking around much. We're just going straight to where the technology is going to take us.
Well, we're certainly not stopping it, but I wouldn't say we as a society really. I don't think we really embrace technology.
Why not? Why do you think so?
We cope with it, right? But if this technology is going to eliminate your job, you're not going to be very happy about that.
Well, you as a worker for sure, but then let's say talk a simple example. I'm as a customer, I understand everything that happened to taxi business after Uber got implemented. I really understand why, for example, in Paris they were riots pretty much, and I understand it's we have to address it, but then I'm going to take my phone and order Uber. It's just a remember, hypocrisy at some.
Most people are two sides of a coin. One side they're a consumer, the other side they're a worker.
Yeah. Right. So it's basically it's until it's your industry, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I there's to some that's true to some extent, but also I think people, if you have a family, you have to be thinking what's going to happen to your kids. So I think right now there's a lot of stress in households because just people aren't clear where millennials are going to go. And we know that the labor market for young people is fraught with some problems, right? There is a lot of insecurity, a lot of low-paid jobs. People now, when they're 25, are not making in real terms as much as people who were 25, 30 years ago.
Okay.
So it's a complex thing, and it's not just the individuals. I think we have to think of ourselves as a society. What kind of society do we want? Do we want a society where a whole lot of people are left behind and are homeless and are destitute and have mental illness problems?
When you put it like this, then it's again. Then I think it's come back to the conservative point of view, right? Where it's up to the individual. to kind of get out of it. But from if you're doing a bit of research, you understand all the social and other pressures that's coming to it.
Well, there's a bit of a flavor of conservatism now that is highly individualistic, but there is also a flavor of conservatism that understands the role of the state in supporting society.
Just want to talk a bit more back to universal basic income and the money question. I feel that's what people really question about. So when you do like back on a kind of on the back of an envelope math and stuff like that, and I googled around. So for example, even like for Canada, they estimated that it's going to cost $43 billion to give away. I have it right here. So like 16,000 per person in a year. Yeah. So what do you think? How are we going to address, if we're going to implement, how are we going to address the funds? Where's the money going to come from?
The money's going to come because we're a rich society. We're not a poor society. We're a rich society. So we just have not figured out how to share the benefits of that society. If you look at a graph of labor productivity and hourly wages of workers. When I was a young economist some decades ago at U of T, and the data we had was from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. And those two lines tracked each other. Every time labor productivity went up about 3%, wages went up about 3%. Right? And so between the end of World War II and the mid-1970s, those two lines increased by almost exactly the same percentage point, about 100%. So each person was making 100% more per hour and was getting paid 100% more per hour. Since the mid-1970s, labor productivity has kept going up almost the same rate as it was before the mid-70s. So it's now at about 250% higher than in 1950. Wages stopped growing in the mid-1970s. And so the average worker now is making about 100% more than they did in 1950, but they're producing about 250% more. And the issue is all of that productivity gain has gone to a very small group in society.
You mean like the top corporations, the profits? Absolutely.
And so it's not that we can't afford these kind of programs. We can. And again, this is not a net. This is an income redistribution program. So someone's going to pay.
So the top 10% is going to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. But they'll also benefit. I mean, that's what we have to understand.
Because
they'll benefit because these people at the bottom can spend their money, and they're going to spend their money on things that these people at the top make, and they make profits off of. They're going to benefit from having a healthier society, a more stable society, fewer social problems. It's going to be a better society to live in. And so there are benefits for everyone from this. But yeah, someone is going to have to pay so that those people at the bottom can get a bigger share of the pie. And my only point is, our pie is plenty big to do this.
To pay for that.
To afford this, yes, absolutely.
I'm just saying, why would the top 10% agree to something like this if they're not really thinking about the system of overwhelming? Where are you saying
you're right? If they're thinking, as completely as individuals, then it's problematic, and that's a problem on the right. They think it's they're successful because of their own individual actions, and they don't appreciate that. No, they are successful because they are embedded in a society that allowed them to survive. I think what we need is a change in social morality that says it's not right to have as unequal a society as we have. It's not right for some people to make 5, 10, 15 million and other people not have enough money to eat. Right? So I think there's an ethical shift that's needed. I think at the same time, people need to start understanding their own self-interest. And even those people at the top who are going to be net losers from basic income, there'll still be gains for them from a better society, a more stable society, a more robust economy. And so those are all good things for them. But I think, we need to learn to share a bit.
But then I read it somewhere, like some kind of a book. It's like I don't remember the exact name. It was kind of a power rule or something like that. And but basically what they stated is that when you get to uncountable objects, like something like money, for example, what we're going to end up is going to they were using a mathematical model, which I couldn't understand. But the fact was that when it's something like money, it will 10% or a few will end up owning the most. So they had an example of academic professors. I think that's in academia, their example was that most professors like a few professors own most of publications, their name, like a proportionally more publications online. So the question is like, if it's true, if we assume that this is true, would it that we will always have to correct the system? And when it's like we corrected it, then people found a way to, again, when the money gonna accumulate at the top 10%, and then we kind of correct it again, and that will keep going in society, or?
Well, I think, I think there'll always be some people who are more successful than others. So I don't think that's going to change. And in some cases, it's because some people have really brilliant ideas, or they just come along at the right time. But I think in a lot of cases, those people who rise to the top, they rise to the top because they're embedded in a deeper set of social networks. It gives them some certain amount of privilege, and therefore they get access to opportunities that the average person doesn't. Right? So it's not a fair system by any stretch of the imagination. Again, I don't think we're talking here about not having millionaires. But maybe what we're saying is that those people who make $1 million, maybe they should be satisfied with 900,000. I don't think that's such a big price to pay for a better, more stable society with fewer social problems, less mental health issues. Look at the United States. I mean, it's a society that is rich, but I wouldn't want to live there.
Yeah.
And it's because it's that way in part because of the serious inequality in that system that's getting worse and worse. People are getting left behind, and the end result is we get people like Trump elected into power. And
do you you just said inequality getting worse and worse? It's like that's in what sense exactly?
If you go back to the 1920s, before a lot of these changes happened, the top 1%. They took about 16 to 18% of GDP. Right? So that was their slice.
Yeah.
Almost a fifth of the entire economy went to the top 1%. All these changes came in after World War II, unemployment insurance, public education, pension plans. Their share fell to about 8% by the 70s. So they went from about 16 to 7. So their share was cut in half. Now, they were doing okay because the economy was getting much, much more productive. So their 8% still represented a real gain in standard of living. But what's happened since the mid-1970s is we've gone back up. And so now the top 1% again have about 16% of everything we produce. And so our economy is now as unequal as it was when the robber barons and the Rockefellers and the Morgans were running the show.
Oh, wow.
There were no unions. There was no public education.
And that because of the policy that were implemented in the 70s, or why did that happen?
Well, I think it's because there was a pushback. So I think the globalization had an impact. I think the nature of technology is such that it does tend to generate more winners, because with a steel mill, you need a couple $2 billion to set up a steel mill. So you're not going to set up a steel mill every once in a while, right? And once you got it, you're going to keep running it. Where with a software company, what do you need? 100 people and a couple of computers. Maybe for $1 million, you can set yourself up as a competitor to Google. And so it's much easier to enter sectors now, but that also means it's much easier to get kicked out of sectors, right? So that's where all the insecurity is coming.
Faster economy. Yeah. And then we're coming back. So I think, to kind of summarize everything here, what would you say the final? What's our final goal? Is it we talked about fixing the social, fixing the economy. We talked about giving this pillar of universal basic income. We talked a bit about giving employment to people and allowing them to get more training and kind of progress in the hierarchy of employment by themselves, right? So what would you say the final, what's the goal we're pursuing? Full employment, we're pursuing this is a pillow. So if you don't want to work, if you feel $30,000-$20,000 per year is enough for you to sustain a lifestyle that you have, you're more than welcome to do that. What's kind of we're chasing here? I
think the ultimate goal here is to allow people to be as productive as they possibly can. And how you define that depends on who the individual is. But people have to be able to have choices and be able to say, I can do this, and that's good for society. For some people, that may not be paid employment. They may be doing something else. For some people, that may be protesting that against oil pipelines because they're concerned about the environment. For some people, it may becoming medical doctors. But people have to have a fairness and opportunities to get those options. Right now, I think we're wasting a lot of talent, because the system is broken. So you have to find a way of harvesting that human talent, because I'm very optimistic about human beings. I mean, we do marvelous things, but it's in a system that's unfair, that has the potential to have catastrophic negative implications, because as humans, we also have flaws. And one of the flaws we have is we don't deal well with inequality.